safe and right.
Yeah.
But we're right next door.
Yeah. And do you live up here in Broomfield?
3 blocks into Westminster.
Right. Yeah. See, I don't, you know, I go down, take the light rail down to Union Station and then walk to the library, you know, every couple of weeks or once a month to volunteer at the library.
Mhm.
And I never had a problem, never, ever had a problem.
I worked downtown
Yeah.
for a couple of years, but that was 2000. Oh, 99 and 2000. With the millennium scale.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting time in our history, wasn't it?
Yeah. Nobody knows for sure what's gonna happen.
Yeah. And my first degree was in computer programming. So I'm like, I can understand why this would be a problem, but I can't understand why it's like programmers know how to, you know, there's always going to be some unintended little glitchy things,
yeah.
but it's like, we can plan for this. We could even run scenarios to
Yeah.
test for this.
Yeah,
I don't know what the big deal was. And
well,
thankfully it was not a big deal.
yeah, I think the worry was with so many computers. Uh, from personal business and bigger,
Right.
we're all gonna, you know, it was all gonna happen at midnight.
My husband's in telecom and he's like, this is all, you know, mind you,
Yeah.
some little things, but it's not like the electrical grid's gonna go down. You know, there's redundancies in all of these. They can manage all of this.
In 2000, less of the infrastructure was microprocessor based.
Mhm.
Well, now
It
more
really-
things are.
Absolutely. Worried about my car suddenly going, oh, there's some digital thing going, you know, showing there's a thing in front of you. It's like, but there's no thing in front of me.
These television shows that have somebody remotely taking over control of a car.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and now in Denver, they have
I saw it on the news.
automatic self-driving.
Self-driving thing that they're
Right,
testing.
yeah, right system.
I was gonna say, is that me or you?
That's me.
Sounds like
about ready to start.
That's right. I do the same thing.
I went to Roots Tech conference last March,
Mhm.
and you know, the train gets there in the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah.
It was raining. So I
Lovely.
was hanging out with a few other people that were there for the conference that had gotten off the train also. So I was asking, so how are you getting to your hotel? And one guy said, oh, well, we ordered an Uber, he ought to be here fairly quickly. I said, would he have room to take me? Oh yeah, we'll ask him. So I had my first Uber, but I didn't have to use the app.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's funny, we used to ask our, you know, our parents and grandparents, oh, did you live through the Depression or the Dust Bowl or different things? And we're gonna have our grandkids asking, it's like, did you survive the like Y2K? And
Yeah,
it's like, yeah.
And cool.
Yeah, we did. It wasn't even exciting. We woke up the next morning and the alarm clocks went off and it was another day.
Yeah. COVID was a little scarier and of course
Yeah.
more widespread, affected more people.
Mhm.
I think in hindsight, most people would agree that it was a little overhyped.
Right.
Well, and maybe not, you know.
Not for those who lost loved ones.
But, yeah, the precautions that went in place didn't save everybody.
No.
Yeah, my dad's death certificate, he had several chronic ailments, but among the list of things
Yeah.
for cause of death was COVID.
Yeah. Yep, it was a factor.
And I think it was that way for my mom too.
Okay.
Dad was 21 and mom's 23.
It's hard to lose them close together, relatively close together. But it's hard to lose them no matter when.
yeah, and, oh, and there was a brother in between.
Yeah, I had a number of people who passed away, no immediate family, but people who passed away that I knew really well. And it's like, yep, most of them had like an underlying something or other else, but some, I have friends who
Oh, yeah.
have caught COVID like 5 times. They have long COVID. They're just dealing with all kinds of stuff. And some were in their 30s
Yeah.
and they have long COVID to the point where they can't work.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff.
My wife has residuals from West Nile.
Okay, yeah, because that's another one that just kind of blindsides you because some people don't have a big problem with it and some people it just affects so drastically.
And we had a friend about the same age as my wife, was a lawyer. And her doctor was chalking up her neurological symptoms to West Nile.
Okay,
Years later, figured out that she was undergoing early onset dementia at the same time.
gosh.
Which,
Oh, okay,
which kind of exacerbated.
right, just a double whammy.
Yeah, so she had to stop practicing law and couldn't work from then on.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't take most things very seriously because we don't have to, and then
Oh.
it smacks us in the face.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Well, that's complacency, comfortable and don't feel threatened.
right, we're still like teenagers in some ways. I'm invincible, nothing can hurt me.
Well, really, our affluence and our relatively healthy lifestyles
Uh-huh,
and other factors insulate us somewhat.
absolutely,
And so it doesn't hurt to kind of take an assessment and go, oh, I'm well, a lot of them.
exactly.
Secure from the effects of this, that, the other thing. And,
Well,
yeah, are there steps we can take to improve our chances?
right. And to be really thankful when we don't get these things, because in some places, they just get it so easily.
Yeah, I retired a couple, 3 years ago, and the one thing I didn't want to do was get lazy and become a couch potato.
Right,
So we had free rec center passes through our Advantage plan.
right.
So I signed up, and then I don't know, I think I started out going 2 or 3 days a week, and finally I decided, no, this needs to be an everyday.
That's right. Yeah. Do something different.
Don't hit the snooze and make some excuse for, oh, I'll go tomorrow.
Good for you.
And so that's what
So sound test, let me know if you hear us, give me a hands up or something, or turn on your video.
Oh, okay, so,
it latches.
right, okay, so my, only just pushed it.
Oh, couldn't miss it.
Your little inspiration and motivation tonight.
Sure.
Hi, Kirk.
Hey, Karen, do you hear us?
Oh, I can't hear you.
Hear us? Testing 1, 2, 3.
Wait a minute. Might be my Bluetooth.
Karen, do you hear us?
I know Conrad is out of town. She's on.
Karen, do you hear us?
I'm working on it.
Test. Karen,
Yeah, that's the same. That's been there forever. Those two are different. These are different.
Okay, I'm connected.
testing 1, 2, 3. Do you hear?
I do.
Good. Thanks.
Yes.
Can we determine? It's a little bit of an adjustment. One of the things I found that helps me is considering it a promotion. I was promoted to management, but now I figured out I was promoted to management, but not to executive. You know,
You're not a mahogany road.
there's still that level of supervision
Yeah.
I'm under.
How's she adjusted?
Oh, Debbie had a terrible time. She
Yeah.
hated it, sitting around. She just
Oh, my
wasn't,
gosh.
you know, just wasn't setting goals and being motivated to do all the things that she promised to do after she retired, so.
Karen.
Yeah, it's 2 years old.
Did you go register?
Okay,
Okay, how do I go register?
Yeah.
Go to
Oh,
BGS
okay, yeah.
website. Look under events.
Boulder.
Yeah. You want some vegetables? Oh, no, thanks. That's very kind of you to offer. I think somebody will take some home, maybe. Someone will. How's everybody? Get this on stun. That's a good idea. Yeah. Okay. You set my phone on stun. Just like those, whatever those things were on Star Trek. Yeah. The page, yep. Page, yeah, forgot that. Along with several other things. I met with Pat today. Oh, good. We had a great time. She's fun. She's fun, and we had a good, we did a lot of research, but I guess, we was telling Tracy and they weren't happy that I was doing. Well, that's too bad. Well, I just don't know anything. I don't know anything, you know. I'm not gonna listen to hearsay, so I would. Tracy's not a happy camper at the moment. Oh. So. Just not to worry, not to worry. Besides, you can always say it's Gail's fault. Well, I would say I'm not doing anything that I don't check with Gail first. I mean, it's not like, I mean, I'm kind of behind the scenes. Yeah. You know, it's not. I'm the wind beneath your wings. That's another song. Just come to the genealogy workshop on. I am the 27th. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got that. Yeah, we're both in Indian Peaks. They're in the Front Range, right? Where's Front Range? It's here. It's south. It's on 120th and Lowell. We're GAR junkies. You're probably closer to me than Indian Peaks, but Yeah, I dragged her in.
Gail was the draw.
You could become an associate member.
Yeah, that's true.
I could become an associate member.
Of another chapter, yeah.
And you can do two in each state, actually. Oh, two, yeah.
So only what, like 99 more to go?
Oh, yeah.
Something like that. I could take a different state.
No, the units overseas are actually kind of fun to do.
Oh, that will be fun.
There are a couple in Germany, a couple in Italy. There's Guam, the Marshall Islands, a couple of places that you'd think are a little unusual. Particularly London. There's a chapter in London, which I find a little ironic.
Hey.
It's fun.
I received a surprise package week before last.
Oh, yeah?
The return address just said Washington with the zip code on it. I said to my wife, I said,
Uh-oh.
did you order me something from Amazon? She said, no.
Oh,
I said, oh, I wonder if this is, my dad's cousin lives in Washington. I opened up the package and sure enough it was.
oh, that's good.
So the note said they had been going through a box of stuff from his parents.
Treasures.
And there were certain select things that they thought I'd be interested in.
Yeah.
I have a great interest in my great uncle. His name was Wallace. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps. And he already had his pilot's license by the time he graduated from high school.
Yeah, the whole thing about,
Private pilot, yeah.
yeah, whole thing about flight from like World War I forward.
Mhm.
You didn't have to prove that you knew what you were doing.
Yeah,
You just.
Get off, exactly, get off the ground, get back down. Yes.
Had a clue,
yeah.
but we're
Yeah.
doing a plaque for a World War II wasp who was from Louisville, who died in service. And she was 22 years old, but she and her brother would go down to Staples Field and rent a plane, and this is in probably 1934, 35, 36. So when she enlisted, she had more than 200 flight hours. And I was just like, how did that happen?
I still have my mom's flight log and she took flying in
Oh my
high
gosh.
school.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and yeah.
Oh, she.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I already had Wallace's obituary and I've been given his flight log
Yeah.
from training. And in this package was his high school diploma.
Wow.
You should,
And the interesting thing about the diploma on the back side was a list of the graduates.
oh,
Oh my gosh.
So of course I had to find profiles for,
You should make sure that the government has anything you have from his service record that you can send to them. They'll pull it because,
To fold
Yeah.
three,
yeah, or fold 3, but
fold three.
The-
you gotta
hard
pay for
copy?
that.
No.
Yeah, the hard,
or scans.
Well, I don't know about hard.
I sent hard copies. They weren't originals, they were copies, but they were hard copies, but when I sent off for my dad's Civil War, World War II records.
Hmm.
I sent them what I had, which was the sheet you get when you're discharged. and- Yeah. DD 214s and that stuff, and they said, they wrote back and said, thanks, we didn't even have a record of him, and now we do.
It's on this fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
World War II records were burned.
Some World War I, a lot of World War II,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just kind of random.
They have a really nice building now.
Yeah, in all the materials I had collected for Wallace, I didn't know.
No,
what kind
actually,
of
I worked in the Army Personnel Center, which was
he was assigned to the Air Transport Command
Oh my
in
gosh.
India
set records.
and flew over the waves into China.
Nice.
Slide would go over some cups.
You know, the whole.
I might be able to
VA
find-
index
Well,
information,
Yeah.
all of that.
On
I
pole
think
3, I was
is
able to find
together from
the
your sources.
aircraft incident report,
Yeah.
Because it's
and that
something, you know.
had a lot more description in it. And also identified that he was the co-pilot and there was a pilot and a radio man on the plane. But it didn't say anything about whether the plane was empty or
Yeah.
whether they were carrying cargo. So in this packet from the cousin
Yeah, he sent.
was a letter
Oh, my God.
that the wife of the radio man had written to Wallace's parents after the plane.
After he
crash.
died, yeah.
And she was outlining all the information that she had been able to find out from various
Nice.
sources. And so, according to her, they were carrying barrels of fuel.
Oh,
Oh, God.
And what is, that's really bad on, I mean, they're such a good.
Don't close it.
Yeah, Cynthia knows.
Nice, yeah.
She knows the door.
Close it.
But I have loved doing now family search, I work on family search and ancestry. Family search several years ago introduced other relationships.
mhm.
So you don't have to have one relative to put on that other relationship list. So on all two of his classmates and link them to the other
Oh,
relationship.
I see a
That's
paper.
great.
And
I see.
I think you need to write a
I see
paper about
another
this.
story coming.
Another story.
Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, just think what you've got.
Yeah,
No,
You should.
so
Well,
he wasn't married.
no, but I have a picture of him and his girlfriend.
Oh,
So how's he?
And I think I also have a letter from her to Wallace's mother. And they corresponded
Oh,
over the years after that.
wow.
So he was a pretty special girl for them to
Mm,
stay in touch with.
that's pretty cool. You should write it.
Yeah, Mom had 23 classmates, Wallace only had 19.
Oh,
Where was he from? Where was he at?
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Maybe if I had that. Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mine is.
Right.
You want me?
I can get one.
I need to start.
It's. You need 15 minutes. That's 6:45. Shit's 40.
So where are you from? You're
Out of the west.
You're from West Virginia. Where are you from in West Virginia?
Morgantown.
It's real close to Pennsylvania.
He's real close to our people are, Washington, PA. Millerstown, Placerville.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just across.
And you got lots in West
Just
Virginia.
across the river.
It's just, yeah, it's.
It's right there.
What about like 10,
Yeah,
miles south
some
of the
pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been worried about that
We
horse's
go back
front leg.
about every year.
And he has
Oh,
a
really?
odd angle.
Yeah.
But up by,
My grandfather on my mother's side's from Fayette County.
looks like he went through a dirty river belly deep.
Yeah.
Fayette County?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I've seen a horse with dark legs.
just a little bit east of there.
Mhm.
yeah, that is odd.
You
Well,
know,
it's even.
McEastport.
Oh, gosh,
yeah.
I know where that is.
In Eastport, I know.
Yeah.
My dad lived there when he was a kid.
Huh,
House is going,
But they didn't know each other then.
well, no, my wife was not the same as my.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was your father's wife. No, your wife, okay.
Yeah.
okay.
No,
I'm a little slow today.
as far as I know, my parents, my father never knew her father. They were about the same age, both certain.
I don't
And his
know
mother.
if
Her mother.
Bob or Karen updated this introduction for the speaker.
Small world.
It's a very
So I'll hang on to this in case,
There are.
because I don't know what the last slide looks like.
Oh, yeah.
One created was the writing minister at the church that my patriot founded. I found another cousin in, chapter. Butterball
Will that
or
work?
Butterball.
Maybe just a little more.
And My God, there's two more
Will that work?
that.
Am I getting lights? Okay. Oh, on the other side. Is that closer? Okay. Oh.
Closest one.
The slides are gonna use the mouse to advance.
Oh.
Here.
Okay. Let's get underway.
Cousin finder through DNA.
Mhm.
And it's supposed to be
There we are. How many do we have online? Couple, 3, 4?
Bob and Karen.
Jerry.
Am I close enough to the camera? Should I center myself?
You're fine.
Well, I just soon hide down here in the corner.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we need to get started. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt the back row there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that all of you are here, whether you are in person or whether you are online. Thanks for joining us. Do we have any new members or guests? Gary might qualify as a special guest. We don't see him very often. Glad you're here, Gary. Can you answer one of the following? We've already identified your name. Where are you from? Yeah, okay. How's Kansas these days? Haven't been back in a while? Uh-oh. This screen is telling me my internet connection is unstable. I don't know what that means.
For people that are sharing their video to certain videos.
Oh. Then that's a good reminder to ask our Zoom people to shut off your camera because that's affecting our overall bandwidth. And we're not in a prime internet zone. So that would help if we had our guests off their cameras, or at least we think that might help. Okay, next slide. Why do I have to be first? President's report. Oh, okay. Somebody has to be president. A reminder that we're meeting the first Thursdays of the month for the remainder of the year. That will be through November, not December. Okay. All of our meetings will be in person with as many as possible hybrid or at least recorded so they can be shared with members and guests. We are meeting here at the Brunner House. It's located at the northeast corner of Midway and Main.
But not in November.
Oh, that's right. Our November meeting is very special. It'll be our 25th anniversary, and it will be at the community center in Broomfield. I'll have to add that to the slide. I'd like to recognize our dedicated and faithful volunteers, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, our membership clerk, education. Bob is tuned in from Grand Lake, I understand, along with his wife Karen, and our newsletter editor does a fabulous job. Our past president emailed me, said he would not be able to attend. Did he say a funeral?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of those funerals going around. What's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Not his. That's a good thing. Yeah. And of course, we also recognize our webmaster. And let's see, Vice President's report. I get to fill in for Karen. Her the genealogy group has been going really well. They meet on the second and fourth Wednesdays. They've been going through the book Mastering Genealogical Documentation by Dr. Thomas Jones. I think their next meeting is September 10. They'll be doing chapter 13. You can register on the Broomfield Genealogy Society website. There we go. And they've been tag teaming, leading out on that Wednesday night special interest group. The next part of the Vice President's report are activities. Oh, yeah, September 21. Oh, that's a Sunday. We'll be going on a treasure hunt at Louisville Cemetery. That's 5 p.m. I glad she updated that.
This is Karen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's at 3 o'clock. I'm sorry, I did
That's all
not
right.
put that right. It's 3 to 5 o'clock. And they have to RSVP to me.
Oh, okay.
And we need 6 people. It should be a great, fun thing to do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so a reminder to email Vice President at broomfieldginsoc.org to RSVP, and it's at 3 o'clock.
I'm sorry, I'm kidding. Sorry to ask Steve.
Okay. October's activity will be the Old Lafayette Tour, and Karen will have more information on that soon. And I'm probably behind on my time frame, aren't I? Oh, treasurer's report. This is an old balance. Hasn't changed much since August 1st. Okay. If you have any questions, contact Kirk. Editor's report. Should I just go ahead or you want to read that? Oh.
Fun.
Brief events and announcement on the first and third month of the quarter, and the full newsletter comes out the second month of the quarter, which was August, right? Yep. The question of the quarter is, and keep this in mind, we all have immigrant ancestors. Pick one and ask this question: why did you come to America, and what dreams did you bring with you? A fill in the blank. Well, tonight's presentation may help us answer that question. I think that's what Gail was hoping. If you have any questions about the newsletter, direct them to Gail. Let's see. Delegates reports, Colorado Council of Genealogical Society. Cindy, anything new? Saturday, October 4th, they're having a meeting. Make a note of that if you're interested. Oh, a reminder about First Families of Colorado. We've kind of touched on that nearly every month. That sounds interesting. Contact Cindy if you have any questions about First Families.
This is a little more information about the October 4th. It's free to everyone.
Oh, I see.
So
October 4, it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions. And that's open and free.
Keynote speaker.
Oh, in addition to those 4? Oh, okay. Wow.
that's not on this
Yeah,
slide.
settle in and make a day of it. Okay. Colorado Council. Oh, this is just continuing. There's the keynote. And it looks like they'll have panels, discussion panels. Okay. Oh, now we're on to NGS. Boy, that's a lot of tiny text. I don't think I can read it from here.
Well, there's the.
Oh, Russ? No, we can't hear you unless you get a microphone. We'd love to hear from you. Kirk's running the microphone down the table.
Here you go. All right. I attended the annual meeting August 20th via Zoom. Didn't go to Washington and of the NGS. And there were two takeaways, but the one I really took away that I thought was best was there's a feeling within the NGS that the 2050 anniversary is going to be similar to what happened during the bicentennial. A lot of people are going to get interested in family history. There's going to be an uprising of people interested in genealogy. And part of what they're doing is they've developed a toolkit for organizations to use. I think it's like 12 pages, a PDF, and it's all free and a lot of good ideas for recruiting and for helping us with the organization. The other thing that I didn't put in here, but because of my activities earlier today, is RPAC, which is RPAC, which is the Records Preservation Access Coalition. And they're basically concerned about, there's this model legislation that's being passed around the country to different state legislatures to raise the threshold of when they would release birth certificates and death certificates from 100 to 125 years. And in some cases, I've read that like New York City birth certificate is now $90. Now, part of that discussion is that it's because they're doing this because of privacy and identity theft. However, there's this feeling that they just don't want to deal with those old people asking for birth certificates about some second or third uncle. So that's part of it. And what I learned this morning is in Colorado, it's they're sealed forever. So if you want a birth certificate or a death certificate from your aunt or uncle, you're going to have to get their children to prove that they are descendant and they would like to have a copy.
Yeah.
So that's that. And there's a lot of free information on the NGS site, a lot of YouTube shows, organization management, and I've listed them here that are available to any of us because BGS is a member organization of NGS. So the Broomfield is part of a member of National Genealogical Society. So we get access to all their videos and stuff like that. That's not their market. They do market some of them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's.
We appreciate you keeping us updated. The NGS is a good resource and it's good to have that reminder. The information on this slide has what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links.
Yes,
And
those are all links that are active.
yeah, if I don't know if anybody could capture those off of Zoom while we're showing this slide. If that's not possible, please contact any one of us and
Yeah.
this slide and these links.
All right, I've got, actually, it's a 3-page
Or-
document. I narrowed it down to this.
Or Kirk, is this information available on the website?
Well.
Could be? Could be, okay.
Yes.
If you have any questions,
Can we send it out on an email?
that would work also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gail, question?
Slide in the chat, then other participants who are online
Yes.
get that.
But I don't know how to do that.
I might be able to. I might be able to.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Russ. Can we go to the next slide here? The next report is on education. Of course, this evening's meeting is on American migration pushes, pulls, and problems. Looking forward to that. Bob's still working on a speaker for October.
Well, I got it.
This is a reminder for November.
Online.
Okay, I'm just reading off my slide. To be announced, has been announced.
It's announced if they go to the website.
Okay, it's on the website. I don't have that information in front of me.
Steve, I
And-
got that information.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, next month's speaker is Dinah Carson. And the topic is the Boulders Pioneers Project. Trappers, traders, Native Americans, gold seekers, and many others. In 2009, Dina Carson began looking at the early settlers of Boulder County and wondered if she could track down original source material that proved that someone was in the Boulder area prior to Colorado statehood in 1876. It turned out there was a lot of original source material because of Dina's research. Many interesting and surprising stories have come to light. For example, incredible tales of generosity and also of murder.
Whoa, that's getting. I'm sorry, Bob, you're breaking up a little bit, but appreciate that update. I'm going to move forward with the November 6th reminder of our 25th anniversary celebration party, and I'm going to go to my next slide because I have run out of time. Please remember to check the Broomfield Genealogy Society website for details for meetings, activities, and other events. And my last slide is tonight's program, America's Migration Pushes, Pulls, and Problems, presented by Sylvia Tracy-Dolos. Thank you for putting the little pronunciation in my ear. Well, it is an unusual spelling, but it makes sense.
Pronounced like it's spelled.
It is.
Are we ready
Steve?
for yeah.
Steve, I
Sylvia
have
to
one
go
more
ahead?
thing.
Yeah.
Steve,
One more
this is
thing.
Karen. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to put the NGS delegate report in the chat, but I'm working on it right now. So have people check back in the chat to find it. Okay?
Okay. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Sylvia now. It's Bruce.
Let's see. Does that sound okay? Okay. That must be a good sign. Does this sound good for those online as well?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Go sit down. Thank you, Sylvia.
So how do we, while he's getting it loaded up, how do we normally do this? Do we do questions interspersed since we're a pretty small group? Do you want to wait till the end?
You're the boss.
Okie doke. Well, I'm just going to keep rolling unless somebody's like, wait, go back, stop. I'll just keep rolling.
Was those that came in, was it raining yet?
No.
I see rain in the distance.
Yeah,
Flashes like maybe it's lightning.
it looks like it wants to, but there's people still walking around with their pets. So it's like, I think I would be getting in my car.
I'm trying to gauge whether I should open the windows.
Yeah.
Took the windows out this morning thinking.
Surely it's safe.
No,
Something to your car.
well,
You have it.
I'll wait till I see raindrops on the window.
So then you.
Well, that's. The windows in the Jeep.
Yes.
We'll wait until it's too late. All right.
It's like having a convertible, right?
It is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's a great.
Okay, if I stand, am I going to be in anybody's way? If I'm Kirk, you're gonna be okay here? Okay. Okey doke. That sounds good. Okay, so give me a quick idea. How experienced is this group generally? Like middle of the road? Any beginners? Anybody consider themselves pretty advanced? Because it's like, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly if we're all pretty comfortable with these records because, I'm right at an hour with this presentation. Actually, I may go ahead and sit down. Yeah.
Most of us have that.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, that'll make it a little bit easier, but a lot of it is, it's going to be things you probably heard before. And which would I rather do? Anyways. Okay, so the reason I kind of started putting this together is because another society asked, of course. That's okay. No, that's no problem. Does that sound better? Good. Testing. Still, I don't project well. Where's the optimal spot on this? I can just hold it. It's like I have two hands. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, and let me know if my volume goes down because I tend to do that. Okay, so we get started with this because it's actually a two-part, I think a two-part program sort of on people who you're emigrated from Europe primarily into America, and then what happened once they got here. This chair squeaks. Sorry, I need to sit still. So this is kind of that second part of it, just a little bit. So there's a little bit of kind of those migration pushes and pulls, and then mostly about the records once people got into here and what they faced once they got into the country. So when we talk about pushes, I know we're all familiar with this. So there's things like the economic hardships, like land shortages and the political and religious persecution that was going on everywhere in the world, especially in Europe. Natural disasters such as floods and disease outbreaks were huge pushes, and then documentation, including it was created out of where the documentation, including passports and consular records. And you may not know about all of those. So I'm going to go through kind of slide by slide just to give you some examples. So the obvious one is the Irish potato famine, which actually affected Scandinavia. It affected Central Europe, but we always think of it as being the Irish potato famine, but it really included the entire area, including parts of Great Britain. But when you think of tracking that, think about there's all kinds of resources that help us understand these things in context. We can't say, oh, my ancestor was affected by that red dot, but we can see those broad trends that help us understand what was going on in the area they left. So think about using maps to provide context, things like that, as one example. And then when we think about persecution, again, so much persecution going on all throughout Europe, beginning in the 17th century and up through modern times, in similar ways that there are here. So, you think of this image, which is a heck of a shadow or a reflection on this. The persecution of the Huguenots. So lots of these things going on, again, throughout most of Europe. Scandinavia was a little insulated from much of this in like the 18th and 19th century, but not entirely. So lots of those types of things that were pushing people out of areas. And then natural disasters of a variety of ways. So this is, again, I like the use of maps. I like the use of providing context for things just to understand those big broad trends. So this is a map of the routes of the 1885 Asiatic cholera, like reading there. But just to figure out where people were when they caught cholera, how many areas it affected and where they came to from that. And all these resources are available online in various places. I know it's a little bit hard to kind of make sense of all of this, but there's, lots of good information out there on all of these trends. And we have to understand those to provide the context for our ancestors' lives. And then there was records generated by all of these. And these are all the traditional records that we're looking for, so passports and things. But we have things like these consular records, because many of you, because your experience already know, people had to sneak out of some countries, right? If you were in Germany, you asked for permission to leave. You usually weren't given permission to leave. So you had to kind of sneak out. Scandinavia was the same way. Many areas in Britain were the same way. They needed workers. So they did not want people up and leaving. It's like, no, you have a trade. You stay put, and you were really almost the property of whoever was in charge, the duke, the king, the landowner. You were theirs and you didn't get to leave just because you wanted to. So people were sneaking out all the time. Well, what happens if you sneak out? You don't leave records, or you don't put your real name, right? So lots of the things that we find or don't find that don't make sense is because of these types of things sometimes. And what's that other one? Oh, just the passport books, and they go back so far. I think the first time I ran across a passport from, 1780 in a little town in Georgia. And it was not, this is not a federal thing. This is not a state thing. This is a little municipality going, yeah, and it has this great information. And it's like, really? Huh. So they go all the way back. Once, if you had to have travel papers, they might go all the way back to, the beginning of our nation, and certainly prior to that for other countries that we were part of. And then the polls, and again, we probably recognize all of these. So the economic opportunities, America was the land of opportunity. We had political freedom and religious tolerance, relatively speaking. We had those family and community networks that brought the rest of the family over, type of thing. So big pulls there. There were recruitment campaigns by all kinds of companies asking people to come over to America because, again, we needed workers. We needed people just to hold the land. We had all this, think of the Louisiana Purchase and how big that was. And it's like, if we don't put people on it, the French are going to take it back. The Indians are going to take it over. The Spanish are going to be in there doing what the Spanish do. There was all kinds of reasons why we wanted to hold that land. And then again, lots of different records generated out of all of those things. So going through those a little more in order, just the land availability was a huge factor, because everybody who lived in a country where they could not be landowners, what they wanted when they came here was to be able to own land. So there were those Revolutionary War bounty land out in what was the Northwest Territory. There was War of 1812 military bounty lands that covered parts of Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The Preemption Act of 1841 is the one that said, all you people who have been squatting out here, which includes my ancestors in the middle of the country, you now can actually purchase the property you've been squatting on. So that affected all those different states there. I had never heard of this one until I started researching a while ago, the Donation Land Claim Act of Oregon. It's like, okay, hadn't heard of the donation land, but I have no people in Oregon, so that might be why. And then, of course, the Texas head rights and land grants, which were, good for both the Republic and the state of Texas. So lots of different ways of getting land, and of course, then we have, just the Homestead Acts, all the different kinds of things, whether it's in Alaska or just the middle of our nation. So lots of good ways of getting land relatively inexpensively. And for most of them, some of them you had to be a citizen, some of them you had to be a soldier, obviously. Some of them you just had to file your first papers. You didn't even have to be a full citizen to get like the Homestead Acts. Pardon me? You did not. Actually, Homestead, the official Homestead Act of 1863 included previously enslaved people and women. It's like,
before the Revolutionary War too.
Right. Yeah, there were kind of a series of those types of things, you know, the preemption of if you're there, we'll find a way. Exactly. Yes, we'll find a way to make sure because yeah, we kept pushing the boundary. We kept pushing the Native Americans. We kept pushing other people off of, you know, areas of land. And it's like, if you can prove you've been there, okay, that one's yours because, you know, they would have built a house and built a barn. Now, mind you, it's a house, you know, it's not much of a house. It could be a little sod home, but they had built something there. They had improved it. So, you know, by that right, they could say, yes, this is my property and they could own it officially. Okay, and then, you know, obviously all the jobs and all the gold rushes, there were many reasons why people just wanted to come to the United States. So many companies were begging for workers, and immigrant workers were some of the easiest to take advantage of. You know, there's no other way of saying it because especially if you didn't speak the language, you really did not have a lot of ability to kind of fight for yourself. You know, so they could really kind of pull the wool over the eyes of the people who didn't speak English. But even if you spoke English, if you didn't have that power, oh, you're not even a citizen. You can't even vote, you know, those types of things. So lots of immigrants, it was really easy to take advantage of them. They also could give them the least salary, which was good for the, you know, business owners. So lots of those types of things, and let alone the gold rushes. So I know these maps, that map is not the easiest to kind of follow. As a matter of fact, I can't even read it from here, but basically it's how to get through the mountains because so many people got up against the Sierra Nevadas and it's like, you know, oh, so-and-so said go this way, you don't want to go that way because, you know, and so they actually had a map created to show some of those routes to get through the Sierra Nevadas to get to the gold fields. Because there were people that like, oh yeah, we'll guide you through for, you know, give me some money. And then they get halfway through and they'd wake up in the morning and the guy would be gone with their money and go, oh, that wasn't what, you know, so there was always opportunism, taking advantage of different people, including American citizens. Okay, so let's kind of think about some of the other things. So political freedom, and yes, we, you know, the political freedom they had here was more so than what they would have had. So I kind of like this, this example. This is from Germany. This is the Thinkers Club of Germany in 1819, because they had been all their rights to report on things. This is a series of intellectuals, of professors and things, and they aren't allowed to write about things that are not favorable to the Kingdom of Germany. And then it's like, oh, you're not allowed to speak about things. So you can't write about it, don't speak about it. So that's why they're all muzzled. And the caption at the top in German says something or other about how long will we be able to think about these things, you know, what comes next type of thing. So it's like, this is the Thinkers Club. Because people were not allowed to do things. And of course, it included, you know, came all the way up into the 20th century and beyond. You know, we had the stormtroopers here in front of a Jewish business, and the sign translates to Germans, defend yourself, don't buy from Jews, you know? So you think about, even though our country was not perfect in the way they dealt with immigrants of different religions, they were still a whole lot better than most of the places people were coming from. So it was definitely, you know, our Constitution gave religious freedom, even if we weren't perfect at upholding it, you know, during this time frame. And then one of the biggest pulls was, you know, chain migration, you know, and chain migration has always been, and it always will be, you know, it's one of those great things. So here's a perfect example of one of my husband's Norwegian, actually, this is a German guy. I think I said not to do the Norwegians. So this is in 1846, Johann Mueller sailed from Bremen to New Orleans, up the Mississippi River to St. Louis, Missouri. And then he's like, oh my gosh, this is great. There's a German community. We're starting a church, all these wonderful things. So in 1852, with the help of Johann, he brings over his parents. Georg and Katerina, and two younger sisters. They book passage from Le Havre, they go to New York, and they get on a train and go to St. Louis with his help. And then in the late 1850s, several of their cousins and neighbors from the same village all travel to St. Louis to join the family. So suddenly you have this community. And when you start looking at the records, you can see, you know, when you get the details, they're all saying they're from the same place. It's like, oh, you know, because we get an awful lot of that because birds of a feather flock together and they want to be with people who speak their language, practice the same religion, all those types of things. So,
I call somebody like Johann the scout.
yeah.
He figured out where to go and sent news back
Uh-huh.
and encouraged those that followed.
Right. Yeah. I haven't looked that up. That'll be your next article, right? You can research that one. Uh-huh.
Still a German
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
influence,
Hmm.
particularly in aircraft manufacturing there.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really wonderful street artists.
Right.
Would be your
Yes. And the Lutheran fatherland, you know, so it's like, I'm Lutheran. So it's like, you know, we used to have an elder years ago who is long gone, passed away, but he's like, oh, the motherland, St. Louis. We're,
descendants over after World War II.
oh, okay. Oh, yes. And they were very highly educated. Yep. So, yep. Very cool stuff. So yeah, lots of chain migration. And what's the one group of women that were more likely to be the scouts for the people in their family? Irish. Irish women were some of the only ones who traveled alone because they could pretty much be guaranteed of getting a job once they got here because they spoke English, they could be cleaned up, you know, and get a job. And that was the only ethnic group that had women that came over and then they brought the rest of their family over. Almost everybody, every other race or culture was almost always a male in the family and usually the oldest male, but not consistently.
Is that before sort of the era of the Irish Negro Fly?
It was before and during. Yeah, and the reason this happened is because Ireland was one of the few places where young women could actually inherit on par with their brothers. So Irish girls were just feistier because they had equal rights within the family, which is also why the Irish farms were so tiny, is because with every generation, you split the farm in among all your children instead of having the oldest son inherit or whatever. So it was a push and pull, but yeah, you definitely had that, but yeah. And if you came over early enough, you could be like, oh, do I sound Irish? So lots of people, if, whether it was somebody who was a mulatto or from somewhere in Southern Europe, if you could pass for white, then you did. If you were Irish, but you could pass for British or Scottish, you did. I had a grandmother who swore we were Scots Irish, and we were Scots Irish, except her grandfather was actually full-blooded Irish Catholic. But we never talked about that. He was just, it was all okay, but they weren't buried together because he's buried in the Irish Catholic cemetery in Indiana, and she's buried in Cave Hill in Louisville with all the other Protestants. So yeah, and then, things like this, just an example of one of those recruitment campaigns. And this is a little small on this screen, but I know yours is easier to read. But yeah, railroad companies, land companies, everybody was putting these posters out because again, they need workers out there, but they need people just to hold the land. And because when the railroads were built, a lot of the land was owned by the railroads automatically because they're like, yeah, we'll put it through. You give us the land, we'll put a railroad through because it was to the advantage of the state or the municipality to have the railroad come through. And then the railroads would sell the land once they took what they wanted. So lots of railroad, lots of land being sold along those railroad tracks. Right. Oh, yeah, yeah, anything, yep. Yeah, I was down in, oh gosh, where were we? I don't know, down southern Colorado, and they were talking about from one railroad stop to the other during the 1800s was 23 miles. I'm not sure if I have the number exactly right. And I'm like, why are they 23 miles apart? Because they were still being run on wood. And you could only load so much wood on there and you burned through that much wood during that period of time. So you had to be able to refuel with wood at regular intervals. So it's like, measure them and you start looking at those old railroad stops and they're like clockwork. Okay. Right. Yeah, and there's actually people, I don't know how many of you know Glenn York, he does a lot of Quaker research and stuff. So his family actually came to Nebraska or one of the Dakotas, and what they bought the land for was to plant trees. So that was their industry with that land. So yeah, it's pretty cool how all of it kind of all works together, what we need. Here's another one of those immigration advertisements. This is on Kansas Memory. Anybody here from the ancestors in Kansas that doesn't know about kansasmemory.gov? They have the best site. I wish I had Kansas ancestors because this is a fabulous site with tons of free resources. But yeah, this is one of those, immigrants, most fertile lands of Kansas to do all these different things. And again, this land is being sold really inexpensively because we just want people to come out there and build communities. And then, of course, the letters from migrants sending back. So lots of this kind of correspondence has been saved by families and sometimes by organizations, as telling family about how great it is. So just think of the wonderful narrative information you're getting on these. So yeah, just there's different things you could go looking for. Okay, so now let's get into the problems. Whoops, actually, this is going to get ahead of me. It's like I wasn't sure I'd be able to control my own slides. So I'm like, we'll just put them on timers. So yeah, all those different problems. So, first steps we're going to cover, and then finding work was huge. Housing and living conditions were horrible. Cultural adjustments they had to go through. Lots of legal and political hurdles that continue for immigrants today. And then health and welfare was another big problem that they faced once they got here. So we're going to go through these kind of methodically. So first steps when they get to a new land, what's the first thing you do when you get to a place? It's like you have to get in processed. If you came in really early, you may just get put on a boat and there's the land, go, and you're free and nobody's going to deal with you too much. Exactly. Yeah. Pretty simple. But, by the late 1800s or, mid 1800s, everybody was getting processed for really good reasons. There were so many different good reasons to process them. And I'm going to go through some of those. I picked the Port of Galveston for this only because people always think, okay, there's New York, there's Boston, New Orleans was a big one, but Galveston was a huge in-processing port. And there's records for all of these different locations. So especially if people were coming up the Mississippi River, coming into New Orleans or Galveston were just so much closer than having to try and get a train across country. It was so much better. So lots of people came in, even if you were coming from Northern Europe, you were coming into Galveston and New Orleans quite often. So remember to look at all of those different places. And again, this is from the Galveston and Texas History Center, because every municipality realizes the value of genealogy tourism and things. So everybody's putting these things out there to kind of encourage you to, come visit their things. There's lots of different language and ethnic barriers. So this is an example. You can see at the bottom, it says, does Italy want protected bandits among us? And it's titled The Lessons of New Orleans, because every ethnic group has these different kinds of things for the most part. The English were pretty much, they didn't face as much of this, but Germans got persecuted. The Irish certainly, Scottish, not as much. Scandinavians in some parts of the country, heaven help you if your name is written in like a Cyrillic script, like Russian or Polish or Ukrainian. Think of the huge problems they had to deal with. It's like, oh, here's my name on a ship manifest. I can't read that. What does it say? And they would pronounce their name, and then the guy would write it down, and it would be completely spelled wrong, because we're using one set of kind of orthography to write it down, which is entirely different from theirs. It's like, well, what does that name mean? Oh, it means, I don't know, Fred. Okay, you're now Fred. Totally different than their name. So lots of language barriers, lots of ethnic barriers. So again, if you could find the community where you fit in, that was going to be what was best for you. If not, you wanted to, as quickly as possible, kind of get rid of your Polishness, Irishness, whatever it was that was holding you back, because that was going to make it more difficult for you and your children to thrive there. So, so many different groups that are dealing with these kinds of political advertisements that talk about how bad they are. Lots of records being generated out of this. I can't really read it on this screen. But what when you get a record like this, so this is Tampa, Florida, this is 1898 to 1945, and we all, because you're experienced, we all know you don't just look at your own ancestor, you look at the people that are kind of around them, that cluster research concept, looking and seeing where people are coming in from into Tampa, Florida during this time frame. So we have Spanish people. I don't know if, yeah, my mouse doesn't show up on this, does it? You have Spanish people, Greek, Spain, Cuba, lots of people coming in from different ethnicities. Some are laborers, some are, carpenters. So again, lots of different people on this ship. But, if you look at all the people on this who maybe were coming from Cuba or from Greece or from Spain, you might start to see communities within that. So looking at all of those things when you look at these types of records is really important. There's things like landing inspection cards, and these are not something that pop up a lot because they're not super helpful, but these were created. So you think about, when they leave a port in Europe, they have an emigration document. So that's everybody leaving this port. They're all written on there. The person who writes it is probably familiar with their form of handwriting, their language, how names are generally spelled, all those kinds of things. When they get here, they kind of check off that list, but this is an interim document. So here they're telling somebody else on this ship, this is what my name is, because they're not necessarily taking these directly from that emigration document. They could be taking it from word of mouth or correcting the spelling based on that. But whenever you see things like this, there's at least one extra step of mistake that can come into this. And they might actually have made the immigration document from these, which means now you have another iteration of potential mistakes if they look at it and go, now is that Clara or is that I don't know what you'd mistake it for, but, you know, looking at that and going, oh, I think that's a this, and making that extra mistake. So we see how those names get mistaken all the time within these documents. And anytime you write from one document to another, you're going to increase those odds of mistakes. And then finding work. I really like charts like this just because it's hard to quantify how hard it would have been for our ancestors to find work, right? But when you look at documents like this for where they lived, so say your ancestor came into Boston, this, you know, notice this is table 66 up on top, number of families in which the wife has employment or keeps boarders or lodgers by yearly earnings of the husband and by general nativity and race of head of family. Quite a title for a table, right? So what this is telling us, so if the wife doesn't work, that family's not going to be on this table, right? So it's giving you an idea of precisely who we're seeing in there. So we have the first category, general nativity and race of head of family. So we have native born of native father. So that means these are second generation Americans living here. You know, they were born here and their father was born here and he is white. So that's the only category, you know, for that native born of native father is all those white people. So it gives you an idea of who's been living in this area for that period of time and the wife is still working, you know, analyzing all the information on here. And then it tells you, you know, how much the husband is making and how much the wife is making, you know, lots of little different things. Notice that the second category down is native born of foreign father by race of father. And the only category is Irish. So again, you get an idea of when the Irish came into town. Because if your wife is working, you know, then if you were born here, but your father was born in Ireland, that's the only people in this category. Which means nobody else, unless your father was born in Ireland, is in this area, you know. So it's pretty fascinating to just kind of figure out what this is a snapshot of for this year. And then all the foreign board categories, it gives you an idea of who's living there, how well they're doing, you know, because there are people, you know, there's one Greek family that's making, making between $400 and $600 a month. So, or probably annually, I don't know which. So anyways, just grabbing information like this for the areas where your ancestors lived gives you an idea of what people of their ethnicity were facing during that time. Hopefully that is beneficial for you. I love stuff like this. You know, and children were working as well. There's no laws yet saying that children can't work. So these are breaker boys in a coal mine. What the breaker boys did was break up clods of dirt and rocks and things, pick through them and get all the coal out of it and throw it on the conveyor belt as it's going by. And they would do this 10 to 12 hours a day. You know, and you think of the health implications of these young people working in this environment all this time. My guess is none of them saw 50, you know, if they did this for very long. Because again, we just don't have the protections in place yet to do that in the 19th century. And then obviously there's labor divisions, just like there are to a certain extent now and always have been. This is in St. Louis, Missouri. It says wanted a good cook and washer. Yes. Also a chambermaid in a small family. No Irish need apply. So the Irish aren't even good enough to be the chambermaid. It's like, that's just, you know, just terrible. Good references required. And whenever you see that good references required, what that means is, as deemed by me, you know, it's the same thing now. You know, if I say I want good references, that doesn't mean your child gets to answer for you, you know, it's like it needs to be somebody I trust, you know. So it's that same type of thing. So this is a pretty I don't want to say discriminatory, but a pretty discriminating thing. It's like you're not even good enough to be a chambermaid or, in my household, a washerwoman if you're Irish. So lots of that kind of stuff, and the Irish were not the only ones. This is in 1889 in Omaha, Nebraska. I like the caption that Genealogy Bank put on this one. No Italians need apply. Another railroad company has had sufficient experience with the foreigner, et cetera, et cetera. And it goes on and talks about why this company is no longer hiring them. But look at this second, like this kind of subtitle, how a crowd of Dago strikers, it's like, talk about your defamatory, no political correctness here at all. It's like they're calling it just the way they see it. So again, lots of different kinds of things that if your family was Italian and they settled in Nebraska, you might be like, this is the environment they lived in. It's important to understand those things about them. It may not have affected your ancestor directly, but certainly the environment is, no, we're not Italians. Or, if you were Northern Italians and you could, pass for being Austrian or Swiss, like the blonde hair, blue eyed Italians, it's like they stopped being Italian pretty early on. We're not like them, we're not those kind, which is where the Scots-Irish versus the Irish came from. It's like the Irish are one way, the Scots-Irish are totally different, according to my grandmother, who I adored. So think about things like that. Lots of records come out of employment. We don't always find them. Railroad records are generally good, but this is one that I found. It's pretty easy to find the railroad records. This one is for the Steel Corporation. But look at the detail on this, tells where he was from in Germany, when he came over, who his wife is, where the family's living, all kinds of great details. So looking really broadly at these types of records to see if you can find your ancestors in. And I love Ancestry and Family Search, but sometimes if you don't say, I want to look just at this kind of record, you don't get to the ones you want, a long way down. So making a point of going, what is underemployment records for that part of the country that my people were living in? And of course, allowing broadly for variations and name changes because we know how that goes. Union membership cards are wonderful resources if your people were, in a union member or were a union member. So here we have Gus Carlson, who's a machine worker, and great record there for him. And of course, indenture contracts. Everybody probably knows what indentures are, just what if somebody's underage, and it's like, I can train you to be a cobbler or, whatever it is, teach you a skilled trade. You just get to work for me until you're 21 years old, probably, So this is a 14-year-old Henry Gates, I think he's 14. Yeah, 14 years, the first day of the present month. So basically he gets to own his labor for that entire period of time. But with an indenture, you usually had the option or usually were promised that you got to keep a suit of clothes and the tools of your trade. So super, super valuable if your people are in these types of records because indentures are wonderful for young people. And of course, adults had indentures coming over, because that's what paid for their boat over quite often. Sometimes it was forced upon them because it's like, oh, you ran out of money and your family's still hungry. Well, I tell you what, I'll sell some of your service when you get over to America and you owe me 5 years of your service, that type of thing. So adults could also have indentures. And then housing and living conditions, because if you got off in New York City or Boston, any of the big cities, and didn't have a way to get out of the city pretty quickly, you were not in a good place. So this is one of them. This is the caption for this picture is Lodgers in Bayard Street tenement, 5 cents a spot. I hope that was a month. I don't think it was. It was probably a week if you could get it for 5 cents. But look at these men crammed into this. It just looks positively miserable. And yet they probably felt pretty lucky being able to get a spot like this. At least they were off the street. But yeah, again, people, and that's why some of the processing centers were like, how much money did you arrive with? Because what they really wanted to do was make sure they could get them out of the city. It's like, we'll put you on a boat up the Mississippi River. We'll put you on a train out of New York City. We will get you out of here because the crime, there was so few opportunities and so many people who wanted to take advantage of you. Imagine that you are German and you come over and the first person that speaks German to you is somebody who's really a criminal, but they're trying to befriend you. Oh, I will put your stuff on my wagon and I'll circle back around and get you and your family and we'll get you out of this horrible, noisy, dirty environment. And that's the last you see of him and your stuff, right? So lots of reasons why they were trying to process them and get them out of that area, because then you're a ward of the city because you have nothing. You and your family have nothing because you just got robbed of everything you arrived with. So you've heard of women sewing all their money or all their possessions into the lining of their clothing because yeah, it's all you could count on was what you had on you. Lots of discrimination, not in a criminal sense necessarily, but you look at this article, Mobile, Alabama, 1847, 11 houses in Bordeaux's Row on south side of St. Francis Street between Wilkinson and Dearborn Street. These houses had been fully repaired, cleaned and painted. So these were not new homes. They just fixed them up, and they put a hydrant with water from Spring Hill placed in each yard. So that sounds like a really good deal. If you're 1847, you have running water on your property, that's a big selling point, I would think. They will be rented at low prices to respectable tenants only. What do you think they meant by respectable tenants? This is Mobile, Alabama. They didn't mean blacks. Yeah. Even if you were a free black, you were not respectable. They probably didn't mean Catholics because Catholics in the South generally were not thought well of. You should be in Louisiana. That's where the Catholics are. So lots of different layers of what could be meant by this. But again, this is decided by the person who's making these decisions. Are you respectable? How can you convince me of your respectability? And maybe it's this. Are you respectable? How much money can you pass me under the table? There was lots of that kind of stuff going on as well, taking advantage of people who were in desperate situations. Obviously, all the normal records that we see coming out of things like this. So census records. I like this example because this is in Marion County, Iowa. And you look, notice this is the first image of 42, so a pretty small run of census records for 1860 in Pella, Iowa. But this is page 1. So these are the people who live in town, right? You start kind of in town and then you work your way out. So we have somebody who's a miller, has $1,000 in real estate and $1,000 in personal estate. And they were born in New Jersey, because it has the birthplace over here. So you kind of scroll down and you go, okay, we have somebody from the Netherlands who's also a miller. His real estate's a little less expensive, but still comparatively nice, looking at all those columns. But his personal estate is $60. That's because they probably haven't been here very long. Most of what they have is they brought over on a ship, right? And this guy, has his wife and a small child with him. Who was born in Iowa. So again, reading all the details on all of these just to see what we can learn about this. And then the last line is a miner, which is very odd, a miner from England in Pella, Iowa. Now, I don't know about you. I don't remember hearing about any mining activity in Iowa. He may have just been passing through. That was the day he was there on the census, and are there? Okay. Right. And England, those are coal miners as opposed to hard rock miners or something, but I'm like, I didn't know about that. So yeah, and he has no value in real estate. And I've never seen that because even if you're renting, there's still usually a value in that column. So I don't know what that one means. It might be an outlier and they kind of could have just missed it or something or other. But yeah, and then I think it's interesting too. You look at the X in the color category, there's X's for some and check marks for others. I haven't seen that before either. So
X beside the main person and then check marks.
oh, you're right. Thank you. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, so this is the and I guess that means, well, yeah, they're white, you know, because they're living in Iowa and they're the head of household. So I guess it was assumed. So anyways, again, just looking at all those details, comparing how they're doing as new immigrants within the country, as you look at these things, can tell you a little bit about what's going on in their lives. And this is a really uncommon receipt. I don't know how many of you have ever seen a rent receipt, but there's things like rent receipts for people. But like I said, I haven't seen many of these, but they are available, which kind of again gives you that information about what is it?
October 1889 was thanks.
With thanks, yes. It's like that's right. You got paid and thanks for letting me have a place that I can actually afford. So yeah, there's things like this that are out there as well that might help you with housing information for your ancestors. And then the cultural adjustments that everybody has to make when they get into the country is also something huge. I thought this was a really interesting little article, and I haven't researched this newspaper enough to see what else the person who wrote this has to say about other people. But you look, this is the German Volksstadt is what he's writing about. We all know from Volkswagen, that's just like the folk fest. It's just for the folk. And I pulled this quote out of it, and I added some emphasis with the underlining. It says, the beautiful German women with their simple and confiding manners. It's like, I don't know what that means. And the gallant German gentleman, instinct with the spirit of the fatherland, engaged in their joyous dances with the abandon peculiar to them. So you have to kind of wonder, was this person also of German descent? Was he writing about this in a favorable thing and this is kind of the vernacular that he uses? Or is this tongue in cheek of, oh yeah, they're peculiar and the women are confiding simple, exactly. It's like, are they being jabbed at with this, or is this a really great thing that they're doing? So again, if this was my family living in this community, I would want to see more about how this writer writes about people. Is this normal for them? If it's writing about their own people, or is this kind of a little bit of a jab at them?
In 1870, this is probably the way they wrote, and words they used, and I think it's sincere.
Yeah, it certainly could be.
And intended to be positive.
Yeah, and it very well may be. But again, until you have more information to kind of corroborate the way they do it, it could go either way in my mind. It could be a really good thing, or it could be like, oh, those Germans, you want me to report on them? Okay. So yeah, I just don't know. I just thought it was interesting. And then ethnic enclaves, whether you're German or Irish or Chinese or something else, you want to find those people that you can, kind of live with, be in community with. This is a picture from Denver's Chinatown, which was called Hop Alley at the time. They know this was about 1870 to 1880, because in 1880 it was burned down.
We were just at History Colorado a couple months ago, and they had an exhibit on Chinatown.
Right. Yeah, it really is. So again, everywhere people just want to be with their own people. here's, another, these were like the mutual aid societies. So lots of those for every different group of people. This is the Sons of Italy in America membership application. And you probably all know over on the right, there's always like other resources you might want to look at if your people aren't in this one. So lots of things like that. The Irish have the Hibernians, every society has their own little group of, to support each other. Church registers, obviously, we're all used to looking at church registers and they're wonderful. I added a little arrow over there because look at all the Norwegians. My husband's half Norwegian, so I'm always, Norway just pops out at me in these different records. But, to be expected, a Lutheran congregation in Michigan, of course, there's a bunch of Norwegians because that's where they went. So perfectly understandable. But again, these are the people that are going to be cronies of your ancestors if this is your community, and they're going to be baptismal sponsors and marriage partners and business partners and all those different things. So again, looking at all of those and not just at your own ancestor. Other records, obviously there was a Jewish community in Terre Haute, Indiana, who had a fraternal organization. So again, just looking at all those things, seeing what's available where your people lived, or even if you think your family lived there, because if I had Jewish ancestry, be like, okay, they were in Indiana, but they didn't stay. Well, it could be because if they left in 1881, it could be because the entire congregation was driven out of Indiana in 1881. So again, looking at the records, thinking broadly about what is it I'm actually finding and seeing here. Foreign language newspapers are amazing. This is from the National Archives, I want to say. Yeah, I think this is from National Archives. It looks like it. And I'll do a little more on the National Archives newspaper collection in just a little bit. But, again, you see almost everything in German, but the state of Missouri, county of St. Louis, the official forms are put in there, as is. So you can see it's kind of a little bit of both. But again, you have to muddle through in Germany if you want, or in German, if you want to take advantage of these, but great resources. Actually, that was Genealogy Bank, I think. Oops, I went the wrong direction. It's like, I just saw that one. And then lots of immigration restrictions. I like this ad because if you look over on the side above this poor Chinaman, it says, notice communists, nihilists, socialists, Fenians, and hoodlums welcome, but no admittance to Chinamen. Because, lots of categories of people were not allowed in or were not welcome in different areas. And I like the quote at the bottom. It says, the only one banned out, an enlightened American statesman. We must draw the line somewhere, So it's like, again, if you could pass, if you were Chinese, you couldn't pass. If you were African, you couldn't pass. If you were a very swarthy, Southern Mediterranean, Southern European, you really couldn't pass. So you really had to find a way to kind of make your way or create your own community. Since you're all experienced, you probably know about a lot of this stuff, so I'm not going to go over every aspect of it, but just the different naturalization requirements that we had at different times. The big one was the 1798, which was that Alien and Sedition Act that has been back in the news again. But they actually changed the laws for that to go from being in the US 5 years to being in the US 14 years, because they realized people were going back and forth between their homeland and back. So they're like, oh, well, if you left, it starts over. Or if you left and you were only gone for a month, we might let you say you were here 11 months. So they were getting really restrictive about, you had to be here 14 years total. And then the other big change came in 1855 when they said, okay, free white persons includes wives and children. Yay, women are finally persons for the purpose of this. So, just the different acts, and I didn't take this on through to the 20th century, but you kind of see how some of those changes kind of came and went. And then that just a little more about the Alien Sedition Act. So the people who were most affected were the recent immigrants, and especially the French and Irish. And what did the French and Irish have in common? They were Catholics. So that was a big problem for those because they were said to be opposed to the Federalist policies. It raised the residency. The Alien Act allowed the president to deport non-citizens deemed dangerous. And again, this wasn't qualified. So it was up to the president to say what dangerous was. So what goes around comes around kind of, and we're kind of living through that same thing now. But it's that same idea that, we don't want the wrong kind of people in the country. And then there was the Immigration Act of 1924, which was the other big one. It affected Southern and Eastern Europeans and Asians. And basically, the way they did this is by saying the people who were in the country in 1890, that's our group. And if, I'm going to go to the next slide just because I don't think you need to read all of this. My guess is you probably know all of this. Yeah, so up through 1960, this was the rule. So these were the target numbers. So in 1890, we had 2.5 million people from Germany. So that means the quota could be 51,000 people a year. So once you hit that quota, you could not, that German quota might be filled. So people, one, tried to get into the country early in the year because that quota could be met pretty early, depending on what was going on in their country. And once that number was hit, it was a problem. But it also means that, say, if you were from Czechoslovakia, which is down towards the bottom at 385, if you were the 386th person, you could be like, well, no, I'm not from Czechoslovakia, I'm German. So people would kind of fudge their way. So records might change as a result of that. And certainly that category at the very bottom, the other Europe, which combined all of the other groups, you definitely wanted to be from another country that was higher up on the list, because then you could get in on that quota. So finding a way to kind of weasel your way in that way was something that a lot of people did if they had to. Again, just the records they get created out of all of these. So the naturalization papers, this is the alien reports, our passenger lists. And this is one from really early on. Oh, this is the newest data set on ancestry for naturalization. It's the Rhode Island Custom House papers beginning in 1790. This is the first page of that. So these people came over really, really early into the country, into Rhode Island. So I thought this was a fun find, because you just don't see things getting added to Ancestry the same way you do Family Search. So again, lots of great information, where they're born, all kinds of good stuff about these individuals. This is the kind of the Ancestry search page for that, because I wanted to show you, even though, again, you probably all know this, but where I have those three arrows, so we have Louis Legrand and Louis Legrand. No, Leorand, right? Because we know how hard transcription can be. So, but definitely the same person. Second arrow, we have Louis Legrand again. We have this bottom arrow down here, Louis, spelled a little differently, to be expected, and Legrand, again, so that same thing. But this is clearly the same guy who's, on ships a lot, it would appear. So, just remembering to do that broad search when you're doing that. Another kind of broad search type of thing, remember that naturalization records are court records. So this is, again, that Ancestry search page. It shows these records are coming from the National Archives. And when you get to New York, what you're going to pick is it the Eastern District Court or is it the Southern District Court? because these are court records. So they're legally binding, all of those different kinds of things. So just remember when we talk about court records, it's these types of things because naturalization are court records. They can be federal, they can be state, they can be local, but they are court records. Again, just where some of the different files come from. You know, and they're all available through the National Archives or other things. This USCIS is one of the newer ones that have been released. Those are really interesting. So if you had ancestors who came in during a certain more recent time frame, you know, it's worth looking those up. And then disease outbreaks, and we are getting near the end because I know I'm kind of pushing it on this. You know, health and welfare. So again, lots of different ways of kind of quantifying what was going on in the world as far as illness and what might drive people out, you know, out of their native country and into America. And if you zoom in on this, you can actually see the United States, there's lots of little red dots where this, where the outbreak was for tuberculosis. And we know how bad tuberculosis was in this country, in the cities. So again, looking at things like this gives you an idea of where you're going to find this. There's other resources as well. So this is the National Library of Medicine that has free publications like this from the 1850s. History of the epidemic yellow fever at New Orleans, Louisiana in 1853. Lots of resources about this. So again, looking at what was going on in the places your ancestors lived, that might explain why suddenly a couple of kids passed away or something, can be helpful. Access to medical care. You know, we really wanted people who came into the country to be healthy. So almost all of the naturalization centers, whether it was New York, New Orleans, Galveston, they would have charitable hospitals there because if you're not well, they have to pay to send you back to where you came from. And they don't want you bringing these illnesses into the country. They've realized how important this is. So lots of free medical care is available through these different organizations to make sure you are healthy before you leave. I wanted to show you this. How many of you use AI already for your research? So not everybody. You know, I did free AI, free ChatGPT for quite a while. I now subscribe to one service because I use it so often in my presentations. But I just wanted to show you just, if you have a free version, you get 5 free searches a day. You know, when you get to the 6th one, it's going to be like, oh, try again tomorrow. You know, you can continue the same chat tomorrow, but it's going to only let you do 5. But I said, and because it knows me, it kind of, you know, it assumes some things because it knows what I'm always asking. But I said, give me 5 trusted historic resources available to immigrants for medical care and charitable aid outside of New York City, because we all know about what's going on in New York City. And its response back was, here are 5 trusted historical resources outside of New York City that document medical care and charitable and specifically tailored to immigrant communities in the 19th and early 20th century, because it added that 19th and 20th because it knew what I've been working on kind of with this. Not that I haven't done some 18th century stuff with this. And it gives me these things and it shows me where to get that information. And these are clickable links to take me to these different sites where I can get more information about these. And some of these are records. So, you know, it's worth creating a free account. And there's a bunch of different ones, you know, so if you feel like experimenting, it might be a fun thing to experiment, you know, if you know where your people were. They were in St. Louis. It's like, oh, show me all the things that were going on in St. Louis in 1865, you know, because that's when they left St. Louis and came somewhere else. Why would that have happened? You know, let it do what it does because it captures information from resources I've never thought to look at. So it can be really cool. Here's another one, the American Medical Association Journal of Ethics, medical examination of immigrants at Ellis Island. So what process they went through to check these people. You know, if you ever had somebody that was held at Ellis Island, you might find that to be a really interesting article. Look at this, Guide to the Almshouse Ledgers, 1758 in New York City. And of course, the almshouses were, again, those charitable organizations to take care of people that, you know, were stuck. And fabulous records in this data set. Guide to Federal Records. Obviously, we all know about the National Archives and what great resources they are. And they've gotten much better about putting, this is how you use this data set on every page. I don't know who else has noticed that, but because it used to be that NARA was a bit of a pain to work with, and they've gotten much better. And then just some research strategies. And we're going to go through these pretty darn quickly. Come on. So correlating your records pre and post arrival, understand how the hardships influenced what was being recorded. Different record repositories, whether it's national, state, local, mapping their route. How many use maps when they do their genealogy? Really a good resource. Cluster research, kind of knowing who the rest of the community was, and then tips on using ethnic newspapers and different things. So let's go through these pretty quickly. This is my husband's Norwegian great-grandfather, Johan Sem. So you can see, you know, I always work backwards, you know, so it's like I work from the most recent records, you know, towards the oldest records. So we have him in New York, and he and his wife and their children are there in the, I think that's the 1940 census. 1928, we have him on a ship manifest. So this is the first time in records that I actually see his middle name is on that ship manifest. Because once he got to the US, he's like, nobody knows what to do with that because there were umlauts. So he's like, oh, it's just too difficult to explain. And then there's the 1900 Norwegian census, and he's there with his entire family, showing that, again, Johan Spork Sem, in this nice Norwegian family. So again, just correlating all that information. And I know that's what we all do as genealogists anyways, so it probably didn't need to be said. And then understanding how the hardships influence what was recorded, because as people suffered through the different things they faced, and some suffered more than others, but when you're unemployed for a period of time, it hurts your pride, right? You were highly respected where you came from, and now you're here and people won't give you a job because you don't speak their language or something. So thinking about how those experiences would have affected, a husband who's can't take care of his family, can't provide the way they thought they were going to be able to, what that does to you and how that might change what you put on records. Is something we all have to remember, because lots of people that were new to the country were unemployed, were unemployable for a period of time. And that's a hard thing when you're used to being respected. There was discrimination. And for people who came over not expecting to face discrimination, that was hard. That was the same type of thing. So think how that would have affected, and the letters they're writing back home about how great things are. Read between the lines, because maybe it's like, maybe things weren't that great and I just really need my family here because it's so hard. So think about, as you're looking at their documentation, what are some other interpretations maybe? And then those natural disasters and housing shortages and different things. If you had to go to a relief society, if you had to get food donations from somebody, how does that affect you? How do you write about that? What does that say about your value as a human? Those types of things. Obviously all the different resources, you guys know about all of those. Every state has a place to research, lots of other places. So you guys know all about that. Maps are one of my favorite things. the Library of Congress has an amazing free collection of maps going back, forever. I mean, this is a United States map, and, we see how big the United States was in this map. And if you zoom into this map, which on the Library of Congress website you can do, it shows all the little roads, all the bigger roads. I mean, this is like a local street map almost when you zoom in. It's like, oh, here's the big road and here's all the little roads. It's amazing. So, when you are looking at, especially if you have same name ancestors, I mean, how many of us, I have Michael Tracy's, generations of Michael Tracy's. Using maps will help you go, okay, he can't be here and here, that one of them can't be right. Or, oh, this is the same family because yes, they're here, and then they're here, but it's just across the state line. These are not very far apart. So yes, this is the same family. So maps are super important. And this is one of my favorite maps that always surprises people. Why I bring this up. Because if your people were in agriculture, if they came from the vineyards of France or from the potato farms of Ireland, are they going to go to Texas? You can't, nothing grows the same. You have to, people go to where they can grow crops. I feel bad for all of those Germans who got kind of, hoodwinked into coming to Central Texas by, look at how beautiful, it's just like Germany. Really? And they, there were a bunch that actually came there and went. So, think about all of that. If you have a cobbler, what kinds of shoes is he used to making? Is he making city shoes or is he making farmer shoes? Is he going to move to a city because of that? Or is he going to move to a place where people have to stomp around in the mud in the spring in their boots? Think about this kind of a map and where your people came from and where they ended up. Because, people followed in these migration routes. You don't see Norwegians going to Florida. And then cluster research, I think I probably talked enough about that. Just again, looking at the people who live around your ancestors and seeing where they're from. Because here we have the Norwegian family. Well, this family down at the bottom is the Danielsons. They're also Norwegian. So, are they going to be closer friends than maybe the other relative or neighbors that live around there? These are the people who are going to be going to the same church, maybe, those types of things. So again, that cluster research, understanding who they live near and how you can have that benefit your genealogy. Library of Congress, and we're almost done. I know I've run over. Again, so I put in newspaper, so that's why we have original format newspaper. It automatically goes available online, but you can switch it to all items. If you are planning a trip to go to the Library of Congress, you might want to know what those other, 3,000 documents are that are not available online. But the search is on the side and it scrolls down and down and down and down and down. You can narrow it down by precisely when. If I click 1850 to 1899, I can then go, okay, I want 1850 to 1860. It allows you to drill down into a smaller time frame, into different states. And then, if you're looking for newspapers, for a certain ethnicity or for a certain language, there's a category for that as well. So this is how I found some of the, and there are German language newspapers on this site. It just didn't show up here for whatever reason. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, great. Rabbit hole.
That's right.
Yeah.
So do we have any questions, either in the room or online? If I get out of this PowerPoint, will I be able to see the chat on this?
This is a question from Karen. I'm online.
Yes, Karen.
Not a question, but it is a statement. I really love it that you told me about Kansas memory. .gov. I found a document that was an oral history of my aunt that told about World War II, and she talked about how she grew up and all her brothers got to go play basketball. Her dad would take them, and then she had to stay home to take care of the little ones. And it goes into my uncle during World War II and where he was and everything. It was just 12 pages.
Wonderful. Yeah. And Kansas Memory is an amazing site. I wish every state had a Kansas Memory type of, because it's extensive. It's wonderful. Thanks.
You know, the other thing that I think is underused sometimes are the church archives. So Lutheran churches, evangelical churches, a lot of them have long histories that are in the archive that you aren't going to be able to find online. That
Right. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. The church archives. And you're right. Some churches are better at, records than others, but even just the history of the churches. And thankfully, I think more churches are putting the histories on their website. If you look for that one little tab of, oh yeah, the history of the church, because yeah, they have churches, that go back so far and they provide really good information on there. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Quakers, Anabaptists, Methodists.
Yeah.
churches.
Yep. Catholic. Yep. Yeah. Right. Great record keepers. So, yep. All of those. So yeah, definitely worthwhile to look at those specifically. And like we were talking about St. Louis a bunch, like the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, which is headquartered there, has like their massive archive there. And you can just call them and go, oh yeah, I'm looking for this. And they'll be like, send me an email and I'll see what I can find. And they might say, oh, send me $20 and I'll email you all this stuff that we have. And yeah, it can be wonderful because with any of the churches, once a church closes, the records may go up to the diocese, but sometimes it's like, oh, there is no diocese with some church bodies. So it's like, oh, it's going to go here instead. So you might find it in really random places.
Historical society.
Right, state libraries, right. So many different places. Getting to know the librarians where your people lived can be really worthwhile. Even the little libraries have great records for the people who live locally.
Sometimes we assume that all of this is going to be online.
Right.
There's a lot to this.
There's a lot, and Family Search is adding it as fast as they possibly can. And yet you still see, there's still way more to do. Other questions, either online or in the room? Okie doke. Then are we done?
I did want to say one thing. This is Karen again. Hello?
That's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
You don't mind. Okay, does anybody want produce?
No. Well, cats on the toes.
Okay,
You'd like a pathetic. Thank
would you like two?
Actually,
Are you all squashed?